where you're crossing whether it's the mountains or the ice, and you're physically close to your limit, but you've got to keep going for hours. Particularly in that terrain, those weather conditions, the cold, where you've got to just think about hydration, clothing, keeping warm or not getting too hot, and navigation, the weather. There's just life in that hour is just reduced to 5 or 6 essentials, and you forget that hour when you move on to the next hour. So you're just traveling through time in small snippets. So this idea of mindfulness and being very present, you have to be in that state to keep moving forward safely.
So we've made it to the Jansbu hut next to the Skidriken lake, which is the drop zone where the saboteurs dropped on. It wasn't where they were meant to drop, but this is where they ended up, and they started trying to move towards the target from here, but then they were beaten back by the really grim weather, so they made it back to this hut, and I think they stayed in this hut for 3 or 4 days before they could get out and start making their way down towards Rjukan. The weather for the first few days was fine. It's pretty easy. The navigation was pretty easy as well. But then we moved up into the higher plateau and we started to pick up the route that the saboteurs themselves took. And we had some pretty bad weather. How are you going, Chris?
Yeah, all good. Very windy day today.
Yeah, bit of a change.
Thumbs up with the bits.
Look at that. Icy tent.
In terms of the actual outdoor experience, it's been a proper winter experience. You can get all sorts of weather up here, you know. It can be easy, it can be hard. I think this time maybe it was a bit on the harder side.
We give thanks to Leif Tronstad, Jomar Brun and all the other agents of the Rjukan resistance. To the 11 men of Operation Gunnerside and Grouse, who 75 years ago successfully carried out the initial sabotage of the heavy water complex of Vemork. Grouse team: Jens Anton Paulsson, Arne Kjelstrup, Knut Haugland, Klaus Hellberg, Einar Skinnaland. Gunnerside team, Joachim Rønneberg, Knut Haukeli, Fredrik Kaiser, Kasper Idland, Hans Storhaug og Birger Strømsheim. Thank you.
Today is the 28th of February 2018, exactly 75 years to the day since the famous Gunnerside and Grouse combined raid on the heavy water plant at Vemork. So our team this morning is at Svensbu hut in the middle of the Hardangavidda plateau. At the same time now, the commemoration service is going on at Vemork and in the town of Rjukan, another 30k to the south of us. But we're here to remember all the different allied organisations which took part and supported all of the operations of the heavy water war. Svensbu hut is important because it's where the Grouse team withstood the winter for 2 months, waiting for their partners, the Gunnerside team, to drop in with supplies and equipment to take on the raid. Gunnerside dropped off course many kilometres to the north at Skrikken hut, which is where we've trekked from over the last 3 or 4 days. So we give thanks for the following organisations who together fought in pursuit of liberty during the Norwegian heavy water war missions of the Second World War, and the men and women who risked or sacrificed their lives for this and for the wider liberation of Norway. The Special Duties Moon Squadrons 138 and 161 of RAF Tempsford, and the ground and air crews of the Royal Air Force. The Glider Pilot Regiment, the Royal Australian Air Force, the Royal Canadian Air Force, the Airborne Companies of the Royal Engineers Regiment, the Silent Unseen of the Polish Resistance, Martin Linge and Company Linge, the Norwegian section of SOE, the Mylorg Resistance of Norway and the community of Rjukan, and finally the Special Operations Executive and the agents dispatched into occupied territories throughout the Second World War. I think the key difference for this trip was, although it was a big challenge for a team, a great individual challenge and experience, the bigger picture was understanding what people in wartime had gone through.
So this route on the old railway line along the cliff edge is the route by which the saboteurs got through this gate into the plant and escaped back down it, locking the gate after themselves before they made their escape down the gorge and back up the mountainside.
From the military perspective, this is really impressive to come and see this terrain, and the fact that they got down this valley behind us and then up the other side and then came in on the railway line. And the interesting thing is, when you look at the terrain and you've got the suspension bridge down in the valley, the Op freshman raid that obviously never took place, but probably was doomed to failure when you look at how defendable this position was. So the way that the Gunnerside and Grouse team got in is pretty much the only way that you could get into this, and the fact that they did it silently without a single shot fired is just an incredibly impressive raid. We're also remembering those British engineers who died on Op freshman, and there were many thousands of servicemen and women who were killed and can easily be forgotten. So just doing this trip has been great to really in their memory, as well as the actual Norwegians who carried out the successful operation in the fight for freedom, and it's good for us all to remember that, I think, down through the years.
So this is where our journey ends. 75 years on from the successful raid of Operation Gunnerside. The official memorial, which sits above the heavy water basement, to the 11 operatives from that night's successful raid. We remember them and all the others of the allied organisations, military and civilian, and especially the men and women of the resistance who took part in securing liberty after the Second World War.
The way they operated is like a spirit that we strive for, I think.